Stop fighting alone. You were never created to carry the weight of every battle on your own shoulders. Yet so many believers live as if everything depends entirely on their strength, their strategy, their endurance. They wake up already tense, already calculating, already preparing for conflict. They treat every challenge like a personal war that must be won through effort and strain. But there is a higher revelation you must grasp deep in your spirit. The battle is God's, and you were never assigned the role of sole warrior. When you try to fight alone, pressure multiplies. Every delay feels heavier. Every obstacle feels personal. Every attack feels final. You analyze it from every angle. You replay it in your mind. You exhaust yourself trying to control outcomes that were never yours to control. That kind of fighting drains faith because it shifts your focus from God's ability to your own limitations. It magnifies the mountain and minimizes the promise. Fighting alone also isolates you emotionally and spiritually. You begin to believe that if you don't solve it, it won't be solved. If you don't fix it, it won't be fixed. If you don't push harder, everything will collapse. That mindset creates anxiety because it is rooted in self-reliance instead of covenant reliance. Faith was never meant to function independently of God's strength. Faith connects you to His power. It does not replace it. There is a divine partnership that changes everything. God never asked you to defeat darkness in your own ability. He never asked you to manufacture miracles. He never asked you to sustain yourself through sheer willpower. He asked you to believe. He asked you to trust. He asked you to stand. The weight of the outcome rests on Him. Your responsibility is obedience and confidence. When you understand that the battle is God's, something shifts internally. You stop reacting with panic. You stop speaking defeat. You stop assuming the worst. Instead of scrambling for solutions, you begin to seek direction. Instead of wrestling in fear, you rest in assurance. You realize that heaven is not intimidated by what intimidates you. The opposition may look loud and aggressive, but it is not greater than the one who fights for you. Trying to fight alone often leads to overexertion in the natural while neglecting the spiritual. You may work harder, speak more, move faster, yet feel weaker. But when you hand the battle to God, you position yourself in alignment with supernatural help. You acknowledge that His wisdom exceeds yours. His timing surpasses yours. His power outmatches anything standing against you. This does not mean passivity. It means proper positioning. It means you engage with faith rather than fear. You speak with authority rather than desperation. You act in obedience rather than impulse. You refuse to accept the lie that you are abandoned in the struggle. The moment you stop fighting alone is the moment you begin fighting correctly. You recognize that you are backed by divine strength, sustained by divine grace, and protected by divine authority. The pressure to perform lifts because you understand that the responsibility for victory was never resting on your shoulders in the first place. There is a powerful difference between fighting for victory and fighting from victory. Many people approach life as though triumph is uncertain, as though the outcome is still undecided, as though they must struggle their way into a win. They pray hoping something will change. They speak wishing something might move. They stand anxiously, unsure whether they will overcome. That posture reveals a mindset of fighting for victory. It is rooted in effort, in strain, in the belief that the result depends on how hard you push. Fighting for victory creates tension in the soul. It keeps you in a constant state of pressure because you believe the final word has not yet been spoken. You measure every circumstance as proof of whether you are winning or losing. If symptoms appear, you assume defeat is near. If finances tighten, you assume lack is prevailing. If opposition rises, you interpret it as a sign that you are failing. Your emotions fluctuate with what you see because you think you are trying to obtain something that has not yet been secured. But fighting from victory is entirely different. It begins with revelation. It begins with the understanding that the decisive blow has already been struck. The foundation has already been laid. The price has already been paid. Victory is not something you are chasing, it is something you are standing in. When you fight from victory, you are not attempting to produce an outcome. You are enforcing an established one. You are not begging for God to move. You are aligning yourself with what He has already accomplished. This changes your tone. Instead of pleading, you declare. Instead of doubting, you affirm. Instead of wavering, you stand firm. Fighting from victory does not deny the existence of challenges. It simply refuses to grant them authority. You may see the mountain, but you address it with confidence because you know it does not have the final say. You may feel pressure, but you do not interpret it as defeat because you understand that feelings are temporary while truth is permanent. When you fight from victory, peace replaces panic. You do not rush into frantic action. You do not speak careless words. You do not magnify the problem with constant repetition. Instead, you anchor yourself in promise. You remind yourself that the outcome has already been determined in the spiritual realm. Your role is not to win the war. Your role is to stand in the triumph that has already been secured. This perspective transforms daily life. Prayer becomes bold rather than timid. Confession becomes strong rather than uncertain. Decisions become guided by confidence rather than fear. You stop asking, "What if I lose?" and begin declaring, "I stand in what has already been won." The battle may still appear in front of you, but you face it from a place of established authority, unshaken assurance, and settled expectation. Knowing that you are not striving toward victory, but operating from it. The enemy's greatest strategy is not always open attack, it is exhaustion. If he can convince you that everything depends on your strength, he does not have to defeat you outright, he only has to wear you down. He whispers that you must push harder, think smarter, work longer, pray louder, and carry the full weight of the outcome. Over time, that pressure drains your joy, clouds your clarity, and weakens your confidence. You begin to feel isolated in the struggle, as though heaven is distant and you are left to survive on your own determination. Exhaustion distorts perception. When you are tired spiritually and emotionally, small obstacles look massive. Delays feel permanent. Opposition feels personal. You start interpreting resistance as a sign that you are failing rather than recognizing it as noise against an already settled victory. The enemy wants you so focused on the size of the challenge that you forget the greatness of the one who stands with you. He wants your confession shaped by frustration instead of faith. That is why you must guard your thoughts and your words. If he cannot steal your authority, he will attempt to influence your agreement. He will suggest that nothing is changing, that your efforts are pointless, that you are alone in this fight. But agreement is powerful. What you continually rehearse in your mind becomes what you eventually believe in your heart. If you agree with fear long enough, it will shape your expectation. If you agree with doubt long enough, it will influence your speech. Refuse to let exhaustion dictate your perspective. Strength does not come from striving, it comes from alignment. When you shift your focus back to God's ability, your inner man is refreshed. You remember that you are not fighting to prove something, you are standing because something has already been proven. The weight begins to lift when you stop trying to control every variable and instead trust divine oversight. Spiritual endurance is sustained by revelation. When you see clearly that the battle belongs to God, you stop reacting impulsively. You stop chasing every negative report. You stop allowing every thought to build a fortress in your mind. Instead, you filter everything through truth. You ask yourself whether this thought aligns with promise or contradicts it. You refuse to entertain imaginations that elevate the problem above God's power. The enemy wants you worn out because a weary believer is less likely to stand boldly. But when you recognize the tactic, you counter it with rest in God's faithfulness. You choose stillness over striving. You choose confidence over chaos. You choose to speak life even when pressure tries to squeeze out negativity. The more you anchor yourself in what has already been accomplished, the less effective exhaustion becomes. Your strength is renewed not by denial of the battle, but by awareness that you are not facing it alone, and that the outcome does not hinge on your limited ability. When you truly understand that the battle is God's, your posture changes. You no longer approach life crouched in fear or braced for impact. You stand upright with quiet confidence, not because circumstances are easy, but because your trust is anchored in something unshakable. Your shoulders are no longer bent under invisible weight. Your mind is no longer racing with worst-case scenarios. There is a settled assurance inside you that refuses to be moved by what appears in front of you. This inner shift affects how you pray. Desperation fades and authority rises. Instead of begging for intervention, you begin thanking God for faithfulness. Instead of pleading for rescue, you declare alignment with promises already spoken. Your words carry conviction because they are rooted in identity. You know who you are and whose you are. You recognize that you are not trying to earn divine help. You are responding to covenant relationship. Your speech also transforms in daily conversation. You stop rehearsing the problem repeatedly. You stop magnifying symptoms, lack, or opposition with careless confession. You become intentional about agreement. If your words carry power, then you choose to align them with truth rather than fear. Even when challenges are real, you frame them through promise. You acknowledge the situation, but you refuse to give it dominion over your expectation. Your decisions become steadier. Panic no longer drives you into rushed choices. You do not feel forced to act simply to relieve anxiety. Instead, you wait for wisdom. You move when directed. You trust timing that may not match your own impulses. There is patience in your steps because you understand that outcomes are not secured by frantic motion, but by faithful obedience. Peace becomes a guard over your mind, not the absence of challenge, but the presence of confidence. Thoughts still attempt to intrude, but they no longer dominate. When doubt suggests defeat, you counter it with remembrance. When fear tries to rehearse disaster, you replace it with assurance. This mental discipline is not denial, it is alignment. You train your thinking to reflect the reality of victory rather than the appearance of struggle. Even your body language reflects the change. You are not tense and defensive. You are composed and expectant. Hope replaces heaviness. Joy surfaces in the middle of pressure because it is not dependent on visible evidence. You begin to live from the inside out, strengthened by what you believe rather than shaken by what you see. Understanding that the battle belongs to God does not remove responsibility, it clarifies it. Your responsibility is to stand, to believe, to speak, to act in obedience. You are no longer striving to secure an uncertain future. You are walking in confidence that what has been promised is reliable, that what has been accomplished is sufficient, and that what stands against you is temporary in the presence of eternal authority.